time. These things are very innocent, but that's the way that kids stay connected now. So sexcasting is now these videos that are streamed in either real time or sent as digital files. So we've all heard about sexting, a lot of that in the news now, but basically this is just one level up in terms of it's either real time or it's a file, but we're talking about video. So moving along to the next, perhaps you could help me move to the next slide. I'm having a little problem. So how are teens sexcasting? Really, it's very easy now. Most laptops come with a camera built in. There's some images there for ones that are not, perhaps the PC. They're very affordable and expensive to have the camera put right on top. Most smartphones and tablets, it's very, very easy. The video is at the touch of the hand, and as we mentioned at the beginning, I have kids in kindergarten, and I've seen them shoot video. It's very easy to do, and it's probably even more so for the younger folks than some of the older folks. So it's very prevalent, so very, very easy to do. So now, why are kids sexcasting? To us, a generational thing, it might seem, why would anyone want to do that? A lot of reports show that, there's the thrill of it. There's some peer pressure. There's also the mistaken belief that it will be private. So sexcasting isn't just a small portion of adults in the pornography industry. Really it's happening with classmates, friends, and sometimes strangers. And sexcasting, I would encourage parents to not be too quick to dismiss it, thinking, oh, that's not my kid or will never happen to me, because there are some, really serious consequences that can occur as a result of it. So, if you look at some of the statistics, studies show that 66% of girls and 60% of boys have sent sexually explicit content for what they feel is just to be fun or flirtatious. More than 50% of girls have sent this material as presents for their boyfriends. Teens record and send things like flirtatious dances, videos. Sometimes there's cases where some teens are secretly recording people in compromising positions as a way to bully, tease, or pressure some of their peers. So there's a lot of different reasons for it, but in part it could be that it's just very easy to do, and there's the sense that, there's other people that are doing it, not to say that it should become an exception, acceptable. It is happening. So I'd like to share a story. At SpectraSoft, we sell a product that enables parents to understand what the child is doing on the laptop or PC from a remote location. We had a grandfather tell us that he was able to intercept his granddaughter, who was 11, who was about to take off her top in a video chat portal for a stranger. Now, he was able to intercept this. Grandma went in, was able to stop before anything happened. In this particular case, this child needed some additional help. This child got into counseling. There were some issues there. And this was an outreach, right? This was a symptom for, there's an underlying reason. Not that it's in every case, but in some case, professional help is needed. But to be honest, even sitting here in my position, I was shocked at the age of someone so young would be participating in something, a site such as that is encouraging that kind of behavior. And it's so easy, and I can tell you the grandfather and grandmother were very, very surprised with that behavior. So, and I'd also like to share that there is an alarming study that just was released last week that says actually it's the Internet Watch Foundation. The study revealed that 88% of self-made sexual or suggestive images and videos posted by young people are taken from their original online location and uploaded to porn parasite websites. So that is alarming, 88%. It sounds very high, but they are they know what they're doing. Internet Watch Foundation is a very prestigious organization, so that's alarming. So, what is some of the impacts? Well, just this year, in fact, I think it was in September, the U.S. News and World Report released a study that showed that teens who send this kind of, like sex messenger videos, they're more likely to engage in risky behavior. And they define risky behavior in the study. Unprotected sex or sex under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And this is new research because research earlier in the year done both in the state of Texas and the state of Michigan showed counter to that. It showed more as no, kids will be kids, there isn't any correlation with any risky behavior. But me as a mom, I didn't find it that surprising that showed there is a correlation between young people engaging in some of this activity who would be more prone to some of the more riskier behaviors. So, and here there's also MTV has done some research on this as well with some additional statistics, just basically showing that there is a trend toward teenagers just becoming more acceptable, if you will, and information and these pictures being sent and videos being sent back and forth. And this, the MTV digital abuse study showed, basically 33% have received these kind of messages or text messages with sexual words, and 21% have taken videos of themselves. And this study was released in 2011. It's the MTV digital abuse. And that word is probably one you'll hear more frequently, digital abuse. I know it's one I hadn't heard before this year, but basically showing how, there are many forms of abuse, and digital is one that is making its way into our vernacular here. So moving on, it let me know too, I know it's a lot to absorb some of the statistics, but just basically want to drive home that this is something that chances are if your child or your kid's friends are engaging in it, there's a good chance you wouldn't know about it, because this is something obviously that the kids typically wouldn't share, come forward with to their parents. So I really would like to encourage people to don't wait to have these kind of conversations. These conversations should be had when the child is very young, and I don't think soon is too soon. So because I'll tell you, I get a chance to talk to a lot of people who are in a position, our customers here, that never thought they would be in this kind of position, but they find themselves in there. It's never your kid until it is. So I think sometimes having that healthy dose of skepticism and having some preventative action in the home can really pay off. So, first of all, what could be some people say, what are some of the warning signs? How would I know if something was going on? Because the days of keeping the computer in a common area, well, that's still a good practice. Those days are pretty much over because kids have the power of the internet in their hand with smartphones. So I think some signs to be aware of would be, is your child spending excessive amounts of time online or on their phones, especially when no one's home or it's late at night? If you find pornography on your child's computer or smartphone or other kinds of inappropriate or explicit photos of your child or their teens. If your child acts flustered or abnormal when you walk into the room, or they're quickly changing the screen or turning off the monitor or changing the view on the phone, as a parent, you got to trust that intuition, say, that seemed odd, that seemed off, and it's happened more than once. I think a reflex reaction is, well, kids are the kids. But I really think in this day and age, we all have to take pause and say, you know what, let's take a minute to figure out what's going on and make sure that our kids are being protected. And that means being involved not just offline, but online as well, because I will tell you that for teens, especially these days, for us as grown-ups, the line often is blurred. We have a separation. We say, well, that's online and this is offline. But for kids, because so much socialization occurs online, it's not separate for them. For them, it's all sort of a continuation. And I think parents need to be aware that kids, not unlike adults, they probably have a couple of 2 or 3 personas. One is the persona that you see at home. There's another one that's at school. And I'd like to argue there's a third one that can often happen online, because sometimes kids' behaviors and choices they make online are incongruent with what you see as a parent. And by that I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who thought that their child was in a situation of no harm because they got very good grades. And I would say, well, that's great, they're getting good grades. In some cases, it can mask, high performance at school can mask some other problems and give parents a false sense of security for other issues that may be happening. Lastly, another way to find out anything, is there something potentially going on? And this may not be the case, but if you see large data charges, not so much with your ISP, but more on your phone, if they're running up against the wall on data, typically data gets eaten up by looking at a lot of video or uploading a lot of video. Now that could be all innocent, but as a parent, it's the responsibility to say, okay, how did you churn through all your data? Was it because you downloaded a movie on Netflix, or was it because you were doing something else that you weren't supposed to be doing? So I really think that having some of these conversations early as opposed to later are really important. And so, one of the ways to do it is just goes down to having an open line of communications with your kids and listening with an open mind, not being judgmental, and focusing on building a stronger relationship. That's the backdrop for starting the conversation about sex casting. I'd say another recommendation would be look into current events, because you really don't have to look too far into current events to show some real-life examples to kids about how some of these poor choices that aren't well thought out can really play out very poorly. For instance, I don't know if some of you may have heard of Amanda Todd tragedy, which happened probably about 30 days ago or so, of the young teenager in Canada who was actually, this started out, she was on a video chat, lifted up her shirt. That image then became the downfall of many online torments and bullying, and in the end, she took her own life. So I think in some cases, talking to your kids about things that happen in real life make them more real to the kid versus, for instance, if I start droning on, I can tell when my kids are they're not engaged, they're not listening to what I say, or they feel what I have to say doesn't relate to them because, I'm a lot older than my kids. So I'd also like to share with you, this is another site you could use, for example. There's a site, basically there's a site that makes money publishing some of those nude pictures, just like I alluded to that statistic that was raised by the IWF recently. The site is called Is Anyone Up? It's a fairly simple concept. Someone submits nude posters to the website through the site submission form, maybe a jilted ex, a recent hookup, a vengeful friend. And then the site also receives some self-submissions as well. But anyhow, what happens then is on the site, these photos are uploaded and they're attached with screen grabs from this person's Facebook, Tumblr, or Twitter accounts, whatever's available. And sometimes the guy that runs the site, he has a pithy caption or some kind of reaction, and that's usually pretty much it. This site gets 30 million page views a month, and it's horrible categories. The category is bad whores, there's garganoils, there's other ones where would or would not. I mean, you can imagine just some of the very poor behavior that goes on. And what happens, what's very interesting to me, and this site, as parents should be aware, it's not just women, it's also men, because I know I have both boys and girls, and I'm concerned about both my girls and boys. But what was really alarming to me is that this is not illegal. It's protected under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996. So basically, this act provides immunity for Internet service providers, which is interpreted as websites and blogs who publish information provided by others. So as long as this website's material isn't illegal, because they're going through this submission form, really the website isn't liable. And I found that really disturbing because this site only posts third-party content. It's legally immune, even though the website encouraged people to sell it and send pictures. So going back to my point of sometimes showing things that are happening right now, like severe consequences, kids are smart, and sometimes it's just because you haven't had the conversation, they just don't know about it. A lot of times kids will make the right decision if given the right choice and all the information. I think it's pretty horrible. And one of the quotes from one of the people that was actually one of the young women who was a victim of the site basically said this. I'm going to read it. This is what the quote from the young woman said. "I was submitted to Is Anyone Up by my ex-boyfriend. I'm confronted by friends, family, and strangers that have seen me naked online every day. You may think it's funny, but sometimes I don't even want to leave my house to go to the mall with my family because I fear someone will come up to me while I'm with my mother and mention it. My sisters, they're so ashamed to even be related to me and want to lie to their friends that they are my sisters. I am a disgrace to my family. My self-worth is gone out the window, and I worry that I may never get it back. This keeps me one step away from happiness every single day. I don't know what to do anymore. So they're, again, going back to having these conversations with your children. Of course, age appropriate. If your child is 8, this is probably not the exact same conversation that you would have when they're 14, but having a conversation, as soon as you've given your child access to the technology, it's your responsibility to talk to them about some of these things up front, because you don't want to do it when it's too late. Because my guess is this girl sends something without thinking to her boyfriend, and next thing you know, it becomes one of the biggest regrets of her life. And it's very hard to undo some of that damage. So I would definitely encourage, and I would say too, we have some information on the website that I'm the senior editor of, parentingtodayskids.com. We have a staff that focuses, we have experts that write on how parents can keep up to date with some of the intersection of their kids and how kids are socializing and growing in technology, because I'll tell you, it changes pretty quickly, and it's a good thing to be able to arm yourself with some of these resources in your parenting toolkit that probably you didn't have to have even 3 years ago. I'll say, my kids are from kindergarten all the way up to high school, and I've seen it change with my boy in high school. There's definitely things that I didn't have to worry about even 5 years ago. Before, if a child was up, your child was home, there's only so much damage they could do. But now, I talked to customers here, and they thought their child was home and their bedroom safe when they're actually, either having in some cases having a conversation with a sexual predator in another state. And other times, it's just sometimes kids are their own worst enemies. The kids are just making poor choices, like that girl I just read the quote from, that actually wind up with some very serious consequences. So I definitely would encourage people to talk to their kids sooner than later. So moving on is, I would say there is technology that can be used to help fight some of this technology. So in many cases, for instance, some of the solutions that we sell at SpectraSoft, we're able to record what's being performed on the PC lab. We also have applications for Android and BlackBerry phones. And so for a lot of parents, it's something that we'll put on and use similar to a surveillance camera that is run in the background of a bank. So at a bank, people aren't going back and running tape continually. They only go back and look at the tape if there's a problem, if there's a break-in. And that's how a lot of parents use some of the solutions that we sell here. There's other instances due to the situation where the parent really feels like the child is at risk. In those cases, when I had one dad tell me, listen, when you're going down the highway at 65 miles an hour and your kid opens the car door, you don't debate it. You reach over and you shut the door. And so parents in those kind of situations, they're actively looking at what is being done on the phone and on the computer because they're trying to gather intel in order to protect their children. So it really goes back to what's happening in your own children's life. I think parents are the best experts for their own kids because they should trust their parental intuition and be able to act accordingly. But there are definitely tools that help provide information because I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's our role as parents to help raise our kids safely into adulthood. And I would say there's definitely a trend toward parents being more of a friend of a kid versus a parent. I've seen a trend. I live in the southeastern part of this country, and I've definitely seen a trend over the years, but I would say that it's, our job is to protect our kids, and it's important to arm ourselves with information of what's going on and use technology appropriately to use it as the end goal. The software solutions we sell can either be run in stealth mode, so the child may be unaware it's there, or other cases, the parents will say, hey, I'm putting this on your device, and I'm going to be able to access it. 2 different methods. But I'd like to point out here that in partnering with Nanny, this is through partnership with the work that we do with Nanny, is that you'd be able to use the code here and be able to receive 25% off some of the monitoring solutions that we sell, and that's at the checkout. But what I'd love to do here, because I feel like I've given out so much information and it's been one-sided, so I know I'm probably like 5 minutes or so short of what I said I would, but I'd love to try to understand. We got quite a few questions in before the webinar, and I'd like to go back and address some of those, or maybe there's some we could take from the audience now. I find that sometimes in those cases it makes it a little bit more fulfilling for the people that are listening.
Superb. Thank you, Lisa. This is perfect timing. Perfect timing. We have tons of questions coming in, as well as the questions that came ahead of time. And again, great content. And if you don't mind, let me make sure that we can bring up all the aggregate groups that will help. Again, perfect. One more time, thank you, Lisa. For those of you on the webinar, Lisa has been very kind. NetNanny and Spectrasoft are working together. NetNanny helps in the prevention of porn and all sites that could be dangerous, and Spectrasoft's solution helps, should the event have occurred, be able to track it. That's the difference between the two different strategies. But the questions are piling up. So let me see if I can get some of these questions going that have come through. Knight quickly said a question that I think you can answer easily here. Is there any software program to monitor the iPhone? Can you answer that one, Lisa? It's an easy, quick one as I aggregate the rest of these.
Well, currently at Spectrasoft, we do not have one to do that. And because in order to put it on there, you'd have to jailbreak the device. And that goes down to just the philosophy at Apple. They don't want to allow solutions such as this because it basically records everything done on the phone. So we are working with them. It's not that the technology isn't out there, but that's a corporate decision that Apple has made. And I get a lot of requests from customers that say, oh, when are you going to have this? We really want to get it. But there again, that ball is in Apple's court, so to speak, because they have to allow technology such as ours in there to be able to capture everything that's being done on those devices.
Thank you. By the way, Doug kindly gave a quick shout out and said, is anyone up.com has been shut down since April of this year. I was not aware. So thank you, Doug. Thanks for the quick insight into this.
That's good.
I know, it is good. I didn't even want to go there.
Yeah. The thing I like to point out, though, just because this one is down or that one's down, things like this come up all the time. And I think the power in it is, say, just because that one's down, like for every roach you see, there's 10 more. So I still think it's relevant to talk to our teens and tweens about it because, you know, my guess is there's probably a phone app that does something very similar. We just haven't heard about it yet.
Yes, that's correct. There is a groundswell of questions around communicating to kids, communicating to boys, communicating to teenagers, communicating so that it doesn't give them ideas and yet helps them protect themselves because they're educated. There are like 20 questions on how to communicate, I know you just addressed it, but if you wouldn't mind, and particularly as a mother, any particular insights as to how to bring up such a sensitive topic in a way that they will understand and be able to process it? Could you address that, Lisa?
Right. Well, I think you need to start by doing your own homework, which it sounds like people are doing because you're attending the webinar. So before you dive into the details of the dangers of sex casting with your kids, you know, make sure that you're into it with your eyes wide open and you're, you know, that knowledge bank full. So really understanding what type of technology your kids are using at home and school when they're with friends. You might not have a webcam, but maybe your son's best friend does. So also perform an online search of your kids and their friends. So try to do a little bit of intel to try to understand who is in the world online, so who they're associated with. Also, know the security parameters on all the technology that your kids use. So that isn't just for at school, and not just at home, but also at school. Also know the laws about sex casting. They do differ by state, but there are some consequences which we didn't touch on, which basically goes down to it's illegal to take, send, or receive sexually revealing pictures or videos of someone under the age of 17. So even if those pictures that's meant for the high school boyfriend, many states impose criminal penalties for sexting and sex casting. And child pornography laws can be referenced, and those individuals can receive for those receiving the content. So that's also, there again, every state is different. There are some cases in Massachusetts where kids have received some pictures. It's up to the judge to decide whether or not they're pornographic, but because the kids didn't delete them off the phone, they're prosecuted under child pornography laws, and that stigma does not go away if you're a registered sex offender. So do your homework. Help your kids define sexcasting. So it's overwhelming, and parents feel they have to cram every bit of knowledge into the first conversation, and just to be like, whew, glad that's over with. I wouldn't recommend that approach. It might seem easier, but it probably isn't the most effective way to talk to your kids. So consider some, do's and don'ts. Don't make a grand speech about sexcasting. There's only so much information that your children can take in, even when you have a great relationship with them, and there's only so much they want to hear at one time. So I'd start out small so they don't shut down. Don't start by asking your kids if they've heard about the term sexcasting. At the mere mention of sex, you might totally lose them. Do begin by talking about technology in general. So an ongoing conversation about responsibility and expectations, from time spent online to etiquette related to text messages. And if you haven't started, I'd start doing that today. Do keep conversations about technology relevant. So keep your eyes and ears open for news stories like I referred to. Every day there's something, online bullying, sexting. There's going to be something you can go to, and most likely in your own community, really close to home, unfortunately. So you don't need to ask your child about his own experience, but you can instead ask him or her, hey, based on this news, what do you think about this? Have you heard about this? Eventually, she might feel more comfortable enough to join in the conversation or even start up one with you. And I would say do keep digging deeper. So take it slowly. During subsequent conversations, you can ask your children about their own technology experiences, not in a rapid-fire succession, but just like, hey, what do you like most about your smartphone? Have you ever heard of anyone filming videos that maybe they shouldn't be? Those kind of questions. And talk about the term and know what they mean. So once you've established communication, when you're throwing out words like sexcasting and sexting, help them understand that it's more than just pornography at adult websites. So I think hopefully maybe that was a lot, but those are some suggestions that I would do. And like I said, gear it toward the child's age, and don't wait to start these conversations. I've already started some groundwork conversations with my kindergartners.
Well done. Thank you. I was taking notes. I've still got much to improve on here. Another line of questions just on this communication bit ultimately is the question comes in, how to tell if child is sexcasting or sexting. How to tell if one of your children is sexcasting or sexting.
Okay. For one, you absolutely can know if you install a software program such as one of the Spectrasoft solutions, for instance, Spectra Pro, that will capture every bit of screenshots that are done online and plays it back in the video like feedback. With the smartphones, you're able to see the videos and pictures they send back and forth. Now, aside from that, I would say looking for change in the behavior might be a way to, if you don't have the technology or you don't, aren't interested in using the technology, just there again goes back to your parental intuition. So have you seen changes in how your children are, how your kid is dressing and who they're hanging out with and the types of music they're listening to, what they're watching, just their overall behavior. I mean, I don't want to throw on the word promiscuous, but if you're noticing that their offline behavior is borderline promiscuous, or like they're pushing the limits with the kind of clothes they have on, and it goes against what your standards are, then I think that would be enough to at least to investigate to find out if they're doing something like this. And in some cases, they might not even be aware of the severity of it. So if you throw out a term like sexcasting, they might be like, oh, I would never do that, when in fact they may be doing some dabbling in it without knowing it.
Thank you. Got it. A great related question again. There was a note from Jody, and I'm going to scroll up a little bit. The topic was, where did it go? My cell phone company says that legally they can't give me printouts of my son's phone texts, even though I pay for the phone. Is this true, and is there anything I can do about it? Could you help answer that, Lisa?
It does vary state by state. I believe one of the states that is pushing toward it is Arizona. But however, that is currently my understanding as well, that the phone company, because of the terms of use and the related expense they would have to be able to do this, they typically don't do that. However, you can use application software that does record every text that's being sent and received, that you will absolutely be able to see that. The product that we sell is called eBlaster Mobile, and it does allow parents to be able to see. Now, I talk to some parents and say, I haven't looked at it in 8 weeks. There's no need to. I don't want to see everything. But when they say something's off, you know what? They lost 10 pounds. They're not coming out of the room. They're crying all the time. Fill in the blank. Something's off. You can go back and see that. Or if a parent, it sounds like that parent may be in a situation where they feel like, hey, I want to know what's going on. That there is technology solutions. There's also, I would encourage just sort of a drive-by, and that means when you go by your kid, hand me your phone, and then you're going to go through and you can go through and look at all of them. You probably will only have success with that a couple of times, because if your kid is trying to hide something from you, they're going to get smart and they're just going to start deleting all their messages. So depending on the child, that might not work that often because they're going to get smart to it. But I would encourage parents to set the ground rule of that it may be your phone, but ultimately it's my phone. It's my phone because, one, I bought it, and two, I paid the bill. So I've seen setting the expectation that it is an asset that is owned by the parental unit and can be taken and given back at will.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm just going through all these questions as I'm listening to you too. This is a question that is, again, about communicating to kids, but it's kind of unique. I'd like your take on it. It's really about what sort of words to use at different ages. The question comes from Isabel, who essentially says, what kind of information do you tell your 6-year-old about sexcasting or sexting or technology in general? And really it relates to, especially as a mother, what do you tell them if they're 8 years, 12 years, 17? Could you just,
Right.
It's a good, tough one, but if you could, I'd love to get you in
Sure.
on that.
I would say there is actually some good public service announcements, and there's one that comes to mind, and it's Phineas and Ferb, because typically little kids like 6, 7, 8, they still like Phineas and Ferb. And this PSA shows some of the consequences of videos, inappropriate videos, and being posted, and the permanency of it. So I don't know if some of the people listening may be familiar at nauseam with Dr. Dusenschwarz, but basically him on roller skates and falling in a toilet and it going up on the internet. And sometimes them relating to some of the characters that they like so much is a good starting point, because you don't want to, if a child does not know what sex is, you don't want to have start the conversation about the birds and bees with this, but just talking generalities about, some things are private and some things, and I would encourage parents to have the conversation as soon as you have a digital camera in the house, like, hey, these are some ground rules. In our house, you're not going to, this is an okay kind of picture, and this isn't. And if I see you taking that kind, you're going to lose the camera. And some of those kind of things that are tied to technology interjection, so at the point when a child maybe gets a digital camera, because I know now they make some ones, I think even like a preschool, that brand, or Fisher-Price, they make some for preschoolers, and you can connect them to the computer. So we're putting technology in kids' hands when they're quite young, and so having conversations in terms that they can understand. And I think a lot of schools now also teach kids pretty early on, not only about stranger danger, but this is good touching, this is bad touching, and you can sort of message it along the same lines as some of the things that they have probably talked about depending on their grade level for school. Going back to the question of how do you gear it toward your older kids, I would go back to some of the points I made earlier, and that keeping an open line of communication and starting it at understanding how they are consuming information using technology, going at it that way, a little bit softer sell approach, and then really tying it back to some of the tragedies that are occurring online, because it makes it more relatable for kids. If they see somebody, a 15-year-old, let's say they're 14, and they see a 15-year-old girl that's suffering a choice that they made in a split second, I think it makes it a little bit more relatable as to why I shouldn't send that picture to my boyfriend even though he's pressuring me.
Wow. Super. Thank you. I've got a line of, it's almost a commentary. I'm just sharing this with everyone on the webinar. Jason has posted two questions, a comment and a question. It started off originally with a question. He says, how do I talk to a school principal about the phone abuse that is going on in at school? And then the second comment is, he says there's nothing he can do. My 14-year-old son says porno is being passed around lunchroom on phones. It's tragic. It's just everywhere. And this discussion, at minimal at least, opens up the door for us to be able to get some good ideas from Lisa, from others as well. One great recommendation that came in from a Jennifer said, our rule is no phone use after 10 p.m. and phone must be in our room for the night. We can check text messages at that time without the child knowing. Great recommendation, Jennifer. Every idea, every bit will help us all as we go forward with this campaign to be better parents and to protect our loved ones. Got lots more questions. Lisa, you game for just a few more?
Absolutely.
Super. The question that I'm going to bring up right now came actually on the pre-registration, with people asking the questions as they registered. One question is, what to say when the kids are pressured by other kids, like at sleepovers? What to say when they are pressured by other kids at sleepovers? What would you say to that one?
I think that that's a great preventative type question, because I think that there is some type of, studies show that people, especially teens and tweens, will choose different behavior patterns. They feel empowered when in a group. So having something, arming your kid with information, even with some of the more salacious kind of things that the child might be able to say, I'm not going to do that. Are you crazy? And here's why. Did you hear about so-and-so? And what? And empowering them with information that they can share with others that's relevant to people in their own age group and some of the horrible things that have happened because of it. Or say, hey, you know what? My mom told me that most of that stuff winds up on some creepy guy that's going to be looking at you. Do you want that? I don't. Some of those kind of either soundbite things, not unlike you might coach somebody for PR training. Give them some information. I think also goes back to just having some, how you're raising your family. In our house we'll say, you're a Shaw. We don't do that. Shaws don't do that. And everybody has their own sort of code of conduct that's either spoken or unspoken in their home. And I would imagine folks taking the time out of their busy days to listen to this webinar probably, spend a lot of time in culturing a strong family environment. So just building on that and including those kind of ideas and thoughts in the kind of conversations that you have and expectations that you're building would help arm your child for situations. And I'll tell you, there are some situations where I will, if I feel uncomfortable, I was done trying to be popular probably in about 7th grade. I am not the popular mom. I don't care about being the popular mom. And there's many times I just say, no, you're not going to that sleepover. Like, no, I don't know the parents. I don't like the crowd. I don't like that combination of people that are going to be there. So you can always say no to the sleepover too.
That's direct as it can get. One of the questions, Lisa, that was asked, you answered it, but I think it's worth coming back to it, is those caught sex casting, what are the consequences, what are the ramifications? Because that's one of the ways that I know we can communicate to our children the seriousness of this issue. And the question here was, what have we learned, anything from those caught, it's all in bold, caught sex casting? Are there any red flags? What can we communicate?
There's two-part answer to that. One is that I remember it's probably a couple of years ago, People magazine, you could probably even get it online, it covered the topic in depth. It had these in-depth stories of families, these kids who, at that point actually it was sexting, but now it's not that dissimilar, and how these kids wound up going to jail for having the pictures of someone under 17. So it is illegal. Just the legal ramifications are a little bit different depending on the state. The other thing, this is heartbreaking, on the site I mentioned that we have Parenting Today's Kids, somebody posted a comment, and it was from a young person who said, I started out online, doing online video chats, and then I wound up progressing, and I wound up taking off my clothes, and I became addicted to it. This person was saying, I became addicted to it. My parents were absolutely clueless. It was an addiction I could not break. I believe, if I remember, the person, it started when they were around 14, 15. It was one of those long, insightful, you can post a comment to a website. It was very, very long, and it was posted anonymously, but saying how it really led to some other poor choices and how they were still really struggling with the addiction. So another consequence is not dissimilar to some of the other poor choices and addictions kids can fall into. I mean, kids can get addicted to this type of behavior. So pointing that out, sometimes it's a little bit harder for kids to understand that if you can't point to a real person or somebody, but it probably wouldn't take too long to find someone else that shared some kind of similar thing, saying, well, it's happened to me. If, happened to them, maybe it could happen to me. So twofold. One is legal consequences, and two, just it can really mess up your life. I think no person wants to be addicted to anything. A teen, if you ask them, do you want to have an addiction, they would say no.
Thank you. A question came in that said, is there a difference in the way that boys are approaching this versus girls? Is there a difference in the way boys are approaching this versus girls?
It's interesting. I would say there is and there isn't. Like the one website that I mentioned that I guess now has since been taken down, it was originally just, when you started the site out, it was girls posting pictures of guys. So it's not, I would absolutely say that internet sexualizes young girls. Don't get me started. That's probably a whole other webinar topic. But there's pressure on both sides of the fence. And I think, in many cases it has serious ramifications, because if we're going back to the question about are there legal ramifications, there absolutely can be. But because the way our society is trending, it's not just something, oh, boys will be boys. It's not isolated just to the boy demographic or the girl demographic. I would actually have to say it's probably more tied back to the life choices that they're making or the crowd of people that they're hanging around. It's more driven by that.
Thank you so much. I think you mentioned this, but what ages are you seeing this happening? What ages are you seeing this phenomenon happening?
It typically can start as young, as I said, as we had the one customer whose granddaughter was 11, but typically it's correlating more with folks that are in high school. But I don't want parents to say, I don't have to worry about it for 2 years, because Amanda Todd, who I mentioned, who just took her own life recently, that she was in 7th grade when she was engaging in the video chat where she took off her top. And the person that shared with me on our website, Parenting Today's Kids, that person said that they started doing it when they were 14. A lot of times when you're 14, you're still in 8th grade.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. In general, the questions have, we've hit quite a lot of the questions already. Thank you, Lisa, and it's starting to slow down. So I'm going to break it down just to 2 last questions, and we have quite a few people still listening in, as I am, with rapt attention at how you're responding to these questions. By the way, there was a kind person who said, "The speaker is great. We need more mums like her. They are a lost breed." So thank you, Nicole. That's a shout out to you, Lisa. This is very good. One kind of just a technical kind of question, but the question is, are messages ever really deleted? Are messages ever really deleted?
The short answer is no. But in some cases, to get to them, you really need a very technical background. But no, they aren't. Because I know if you look to some of the downfalls of some of the leaders in other countries or politicians or big scandals in corporations, oftentimes it comes from forensic computer experts that go in and are able to take them off the device. But as far as a parent having to know how to get them off without using some kind of monitoring software, it's going to be really hard to find them for the layperson.
Absolutely.
But in terms of the short answer is no. They're never deleted forever.
That's right. And it's amazing how they're uncovering, information is even embedded into crash sites, underwater, waterlogged phones, the whole. I used to have a neighbor who was in the FBI, and all he did was mobile forensics, and he would tell me all sorts of stories. So it's absolutely right. They are generally not erased forever. And I'm going to now come up to a last question because there's so much going on. There's so much to answer, but we do want to kind of cap the webinar and thank everyone for being here. The last question I'm going to pose, and it's sort of a tragic story / question. I'm going to read it to you. It came from Janet, and I'm going to read it. It's a little long, but I think everyone will appreciate this. My oldest son started looking at porn online, advanced to communicating with others, and went on to being very involved in all aspects of bad life choices. Great kid, great student, but we weren't fully aware until it was too late to legally do much for him. He was at an age that he could refuse help. He was in college and tried to kill himself and legally needed his permission to help him. He's still not doing great, but happier and healthier. But start early before it's too late. Janet, thank you for sharing that. And really, the last question sort of goes in this vein for you, Lisa. Thank you for your time. As you've gone through and seen lives damaged, kids and families ruined, but at the same time seen how preventative action came to it, what are the 2 things you want to leave with this audience today as your sort of final remarks as we close this down? What are the 2 things that you would say to people about this particular topic?
Well, I think understand that chances are everybody's parenting toolkit hasn't kept up with technology. So I'm really passionate with getting the message out to people to remember the same passion and resources that you use to help your kid in the real world, apply that same level of energy to protecting your kids online. Don't be lulled into a false sense of security. It's absolutely better to be safe than sorry. I know that sounds like a cliche, but I can't tell you the number of people who I've seen, if only I had known, or oh my gosh, I had no idea till I started doing X, Y, and Z. So I don't think it's not about, I think it comes down to striving to be a better parent, and we all can do that, right? So I'm not advocating just get technology and turn it on and forget about it. No, the expertise that Nanny provides and the expertise that Spectrasoft provides, they're just tools. At the end of the day, it's like, what are you going to do as parents with those tools to actively guide and help your children? So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. It's just like you would do in terms of their studies or their offline activities. Who are you going to be there? Who's at the party? Who's going to be home? That same kind of vigilance, apply that to the amount of time they're spending, not just on the computer, but on their phone, because so much is happening on their phone now, and we've given these kids the power of the world literally in their hand. So don't, it sounds like people on the webinar probably already understand that, but if you could just tell one person today, I would be really happy, because I'm just trying to get the word out to protect kids. So that's it.
Thank you.
Maybe that was more than 2 things. Sorry. Probably
no, that was lovely. The general tone today was just fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your time and experience. Everybody else on the webinar, we appreciate you being here. Again, this webinar has been recorded and will be posted online. You will get an email with a link to it, and so that you can review it, share it with others. Please, we're here to help families protect them from online danger. And today on this Sexcasting webinar, we appreciate Lisa Shaw for her time and her talents. Everybody, we are now going to sign off. Thank you all for being with us. Until the next webinar, Binoy Tamang from netnanny.com. Thank you.
Thank you.